Hey guys, how's it going? We got a nice crisp fall morning to shoot our video, so let's get going. We've been talking about Galatians. We looked really far out at the Bible and then have been narrowing our look into Galatians. For more on that, just check out some of the past videos. But we're in Galatians 2 now. So we did Galatians 1 yesterday. Video before that was an overview of Galatians, and today we're looking at chapter 2. So chapter 1, we see Paul using his testimony as an example of how the gospel, which is our trust, our faith in Christ alone, his work on the cross, not our own works, but our trust in him, it transforms our lives. That gospel is real, and it should be a hill we are willing to die on, like justice and equality and peace are things that should be held in high esteem, and even some of us lay down our lives for the gospel, and that definition of the gospel is something we should die for as well, Paul says. And he uses his own life story in chapter 1 as a testimony to how good this is and how true the gospel is. He then goes on to continue part of his story into chapter 2 to continue to make this point that adding things to the gospel will only destroy what the gospel really is. If someone is being generous and trying to give you something, then you giving them anything for that gift, whether it's a penny or $1 million, to some degree is going to strip away the generousness of that person's offer to you. If I was going to give you the shirt off my back, and that would be a sign of how much I love for you, I care for you, I'm generous, but you wanted to pay me for that, then no matter what you paid me, a lot or a little, it would in some way cheapen the generosity of my gift. And that's what Paul's saying in chapter 2, is that when we add works, we take away, we strip some of the beauty and the power from the gospel, from what Jesus Christ did on the cross. When we say, hey, Jesus, your death on the cross paid for my sins, but let me try to do good works to help, what we're saying is your death was not enough. It takes your death plus me being good. And so Paul calls this out hard, to the point of even mentioning that he said something to Peter about this. And if you know anything about church history, Peter was just a juggernaut of the Christian faith. He was a hard-headed individual that took about 3 years of Jesus' ministry to finally penetrate his heart. But once he did, man, this dude was just pouring it on for Christ. And Paul talks about a time where he had to call Peter out for the gospel, and about how the gospel is us just freely coming to Christ with our sin, laying it down, saying, God, I can't do this, only you can do this, I'm broken. And him calling Peter out on that. He does this to emphasize how important this point is. The second half of chapter 2, he goes on to say, well, then if that's the case, I think he's run into this question a lot, and I really think this because I've run into this question a lot. And that is, so if Christ just died for us to accept, then does that mean he is, and just freely gives this grace and love out, does that make him approving or loving the sin we do? And Paul is super emphatic to say, no, not at all. We cannot use the grace and love of Christ as a mentality to do whatever we want. You ever heard the phrase, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission? The gospel says that's not true in Christian living. The gospel says, no, you cannot do whatever you want and then go, oh, Jesus died for my sins, so it's okay, I'm still going to heaven, I'm still all right. And he doesn't say this as a contradiction on his call that you have to live holy to be saved. He wouldn't say that at all. He says that what happens is when we are truly saved, we die to our sin, to that kind of thinking, to that heart of I can do whatever I want and Jesus still has to accept me. And we are raised to the life that Christ was resurrected to, which is a life like Christ, one that wants to follow God with all that we are. Now, we'll still mess up, we'll still sin. He's definitely going to make that clear. But what he's saying here is you cannot be saved and then willfully and wantingly live in sin. Not because because salvation doesn't work like that, but because true salvation transforms you from doing that. You will not want to do that. It is impossible. When you are saved, you are redesigned, you are re-engineered, and in your new state, you will not be that way. It is just how you are designed. So he doesn't say this like, hey, to be saved or to look good before God, you have to work hard. He says, once Christ has done the big, powerful work of salvation in your life, it is so big and so powerful that it'll transform who you are, and you will not want to live that way. Love you guys. Appreciate if you'd give this a like and a subscribe. Hope you have a good day.